welcome to PodSpot, the podcast where we explore the transformative power of HubSpot with industry experts and thought leaders. Today is a little bit different. I'm Jon Pittham. I'm the director and founder of Karman Digital, and today I'm joined by Nick Goring. Nick has worked with us as a business for, 5+ years as we've grown the business, consulting with us to help us shape our vision, etc. Nick's got great experience. You've grown and sold a business, Nick. You work with a lot of businesses. You understand the HubSpot world. And today we're really talking about why Karman Digital has changed, but interestingly also how HubSpot's changed and what the future holds for businesses using HubSpot. So Nick, welcome on board.
Thanks, John. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm sure you have lots to say on this subject. We've had lots of conversations in the past around HubSpot, alignment with HubSpot. Actually, fundamentally, when we became a HubSpot partner, or before we became a HubSpot partner, should we become a HubSpot partner and what that might look like? So, we've been on quite a journey together and also with HubSpot. So we're going to share some of those thoughts today and start thinking about what the future looks like for businesses that use HubSpot and where the opportunities might be. So let's kind of kick off with just an open question to start us off. And that's, HubSpot has changed significantly over the last 5 years. But I guess thinking about the key changes over that 5-year period, Nick, what's the view from what you've seen kind of sitting outside of the HubSpot ecosystem, not as close? What's your view on that?
So I think the last 5 years have brought all sorts of marketing technology to clients. I guess what's happened more with HubSpot is that it aligned itself to business more and not just marketing. And that feels really important. When I think back to some of the conversations I was having inside client businesses, because I've worked as a client as well as a marketing director in clients. When I think to some of those conversations, there was a lot of scrabbling around a few years ago as to working out which tech would help more than the other tech. I think what HubSpot's been able to do is to sort of rationalize that and demonstrate really effectively how using HubSpot as a tool can really, in lots of cases, vastly improve a business's operations, its activities, its efficiencies, its productivity across the piece and not just in marketing. So, I'm always interested to know how businesses were formed, because I think that gives you a really good idea about where they're headed. And Brian Halligan, the founder of HubSpot, came from a sales background. I think he was a VP of sales in a software house. And that's really interesting, isn't it? That he kind of designed a marketing technology to support sales. And as things have kind of developed over the last 5 years, I think we've seen more and more of that focus on it being about aiding businesses to have really good relationships with their customers in order to improve sales. And it's no more complicated than that. However, the technology that's gone into it and I think actually the philosophy that's gone into it has been great, because I think we've ended up with access to a marketing tool that we'd have never been able to foresee 10 years ago. And you go back further than that, it's funny thinking that some of the conversations I was having with people, and this is going back a long way, but it's relevant. Some of the conversations I was having with people 25 years ago about whether they should have a website now seem to be whether we should be using HubSpot. And that just shows the evolution of it as a platform and a tool for aiding business.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's interesting though. You still refer to HubSpot as a marketing platform, and I think although you've also mentioned its growth across operations and other aspects of businesses, that's really important. And I think that's part of HubSpot's journey. I think we'll talk about that a little later in terms of what it's now become. But I think it's still probably trying to, move on, or in a lot of clients' minds, particularly, it's a marketing platform rather than a business or client engagement or CRM platform.
It's really difficult for somebody who owns a business to understand the capabilities of HubSpot because it's so broad. So they tend to think of it, this isn't everybody, but I think there is a tendency to think of it exactly as you describe it without really understanding its true potential. And that's probably because it's adopted by marketing teams first and foremost, sometimes by sales teams.
Yeah.
And that perhaps again is demonstrative of the move that HubSpot have made to make it more of a business tool. I've been in lots of instances where marketing teams and sales teams haven't been able to connect too well, and that's because they've been using different tech, or they've not seen the benefit of one team's use of the tech over another's. And those occasions where sales teams and operations teams and customer service teams and marketing teams have come together using a single platform, genuinely has been transformative. Because business is really simple, isn't it? It's just about being focused on your customer. That's all it's about. It's quite difficult, though, to do that if you have lots of different tools and approaches to doing that. And it seems crackers, doesn't it? But a business that isn't able to have a single customer view is surely going to be at a disadvantage to those that do. And that's where I think HubSpot is really coming to the fore. It's giving businesses the opportunity to really connect with their customers in a meaningful way.
Yeah, definitely. And something struck with me, what you just said there is a lot of the opportunity we see now, or the conversations we have with prospective clients, is where they're looking to deploy CRM or change their CRM. And the entry point for the conversation about HubSpot is marketing or sales. Marketing and sales are using HubSpot, and actually they're talking to the CIO or CTO about, actually, hold on a minute, or operations, I think we should consider HubSpot. So that's almost the entry point. I think for me, if you think about HubSpot's growth over the last 5 years, which has been, pretty exciting and quite considerable, and certainly commentators are saying, these guys are good. They've had a really clear strategy to grow the CRM capability, do it in the right way in terms of the underlying tech. Everything's an object. I saw this, I'm getting a bit technical now, but even workflows are objects now, which just make it really exciting in terms of the technical capability and the solutions that HubSpot can now provide for firms. So I think that's really interesting. They've also obviously lent into artificial intelligence. That's a really interesting play. Obviously everyone is, but I think they've just done it in a really robust way, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, so I think that their AI solution supports their wider proposition, doesn't it? So as opposed to it be something that is following a trend, it absolutely underpins the strength of their offering, and it helps, again, develop relationships with customers, making sure that the content, so that's their latest development, isn't it, in AI, is helping businesses create content through AI, helping make sure their content is relevant. That's, again, a key proponent of being a good business, isn't it? Being relevant to your customers. So one of the challenges, though, to your point about that growth, is that it's really difficult for people who aren't necessarily inside the HubSpot ecosystem, agencies, consultants, businesses, to really understand the power of it. And so I think one of the things that business leaders struggle with when they hear about HubSpot is exactly to that point, that they think of it as either a marketing tool or a sales tool, and then their thoughts stop there, because they don't need to be experts in it. That's not their role, is it? But I don't think perhaps companies are understanding, as much as agencies are, the real strength of using the full suite of HubSpot services to connect bits of their business together.
And I think that's a great segue into my next question, really. And part of the conversation today is about Karman Digital and us changing. We've rebranded recently. We've repositioned our messaging to try and be relevant to the audience that I think is the audience that HubSpot is appealing to on an increasing basis, I guess. So we've evaluated our journey, we've looked at our vision, and we're moving to be more agile in the way we deliver. We're increasing our technical capabilities because we think that's what the market needs, and we're shifting into this kind of consultancy-led agency. We're a consultancy. Historically, arguably years ago, we might have been thought about as a digital marketing agency. We don't really do so much marketing now. Then into a digital agency, and now we're almost a consultancy. And I know we've had lots of conversations about this, Nick. You're a brand person at heart and whatever. So what's your view about our journey and how relevant an agency or consultancy like ours, should I say, is to the HubSpot ecosystem and business using HubSpot?
So I think that it segues into that last point, really, that it's really difficult being a business leader understanding how to use technology to enhance your business and enhance your relationship with customers. It's really difficult because when you search for a tool, there are a plethora of them, and you don't really know whether you're making the right choice. So you need to be able to find people who can help you make those decisions. And whether that's a relatively small decision about how to utilize a piece of technology, or whether it's a larger decision as to how to get the best out of it. And I think that's where Karman Digital fits in really well. I heard a phrase that I'd never heard before this morning, actually, that kind of springs to mind in this conversation. Um, it's hard to read the label of a bottle from the inside. And that's true, isn't it? You know, as a client or as a business, you don't know what's out there because you're so focused on your business and you're making sure that everything's kind of ticking over and revenues are there and relationships are there, but you can't really see on the outside what's going on. And I think that's where Carmen can help clients and businesses. It can explain what the opportunities are to use HubSpot, how best to use it, when to use it, when not to use it as well. You know, it's not a panacea. It's a fantastic tool, but it's not the be all and end all. And I think that's the trick to being a good partner to a business that's going through the phase of either looking how to augment their HubSpot usage or introduce it or even just consider it. I think, being able to read the label.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great statement, Nick. And I know you've always challenged me, in relation to how I feel about the business. And so it doesn't matter how you feel about the business because it's about how people who, on the outside see your business. So absolutely relevant and spot on. I think it's quite interesting that as well because, one of our big messages really is how we help firms, bridge the gap, if you like, between where they are and where they want to be with HubSpot. A lot of firms have HubSpot. They know it's good. They know it's very capable. They hear a lot about it. It might be used by the marketing teams or used in ops or whatever it might be, but they don't know how to get from where they are now to that future point. And I think one of the challenges in particularly in the partner ecosystem is and hence our move to consultancy is historically, I think people that bought HubSpot as software and then deployed it, it was very much, could be very cookie cutter in terms of deployed. Oh, you've got Marketing Pro, right? Okay, here's a Marketing Pro onboarding, and that Marketing Pro onboarding would be the same for every firm that had a Marketing Pro onboarding. But Marketing Pro is, deployment. It has so many variables. So our key in our approach, I guess, was to start thinking almost from a business analyst perspective. Thinking about solutions, being far more consultancy. Someone said to me recently that clients don't really know what they want. They think they know what they want, but until you really unpack that, challenge that, get under the skin of it, then you can't really deliver the best solution for the client that really enhances the opportunity, I guess, from where they thought they might be to where they could really be. So what are your thoughts around that in terms of positioning around bridging this gap, I guess, for businesses and business leaders?
Yeah, so I think this is this bigger issue around business leaders understanding what capabilities the tech around them have. HubSpot is a tool. It's not the ultimate solution. It's how you use it that's the solution. And I think for a lot, I've worked with a lot of businesses who've had their fingers burnt by going to the wrong, whether it's digital agency, traditional agency, creative agency, or HubSpot agency, by just assuming that they'd be getting a service beyond implementation. And I think that has traditionally been quite problematic. And as HubSpot evolves, I think also then the market will evolve to have more people in it to help clients disseminate how to use HubSpot. Because that's really what consultancy is, isn't it? And working out where the best fit is against either tools or solutions or approaches or even strategy. So I think your clients again are having to just reappraise perhaps how they see external provision and just not treat it just as implementation, because I think they recognise that that isn't necessarily the best way to utilise the resources that are external to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not, and you're right in terms of clients not necessarily knowing what they want, and the role of a good agency, and certainly from what I've experienced with Karman, is to ask the right questions. And in doing that,
Yeah.
you eke out then what the challenge is, and therefore the solution. I think too many, I have an agency career that spans 30 years. Too many agencies over that 30 years could be accused of just running in and selling what they make. That's not
Yeah.
business. It's far better to just listen and work out what the requirement is and then respond. And that's not necessarily the case in every supplier, if I use that term, or partner that clients come across. And as a result, they find it quite difficult to trust partners in a way that they think they will get best value, because that's important as well. I think sometimes HubSpot can be seen as a cost rather than an investment. And that's largely because of the experiences that people may have had with it before, where, because it's not been taken on by the business sufficiently well, the client business sufficiently well, then they've not reaped the rewards of it, and it has been a costly exercise for them rather than it being a really transformational exercise.
Yeah, I think really good point, Nick, and no different to any other bit of software, really. The software doesn't necessarily deliver the solution. It's how it's used, it's how it's configured that really delivers the solution. So the investment actually in making the software work, in embedding the software in the team, in training people, in aligning with capabilities in-house, etc., all of that stuff is critically important to make a success of any software you onboard, really. And I think often people have sold the sizzle of HubSpot. It's a great platform, think it's going to give them the solution, they deploy it, and then it doesn't quite deliver what they wanted. So then it becomes a problem, and then it's a cost, and then people become disenfranchised with it. So all of that stuff starts to snowball.
Yeah, and I think that's possibly born out of, if there is a criticism of HubSpot and how they're positioning the platform, it's quite difficult to know who owns it in terms of inside a business. Should it sit with sales? Should it sit with marketing? Should it sit with the CTO? Should it be part of ops? The reality is it can be part of all of those, but who has ownership of it? And I think that's something that perhaps a business would benefit from thinking about during the process of adopting it, so that there's some real ownership. Because, like with any consideration inside a business, where there's greater clarity over ownership, accountability, and responsibility, there'll be greater success. Perhaps sometimes that's a bit of a challenge for business, because there hasn't been really many systems in businesses. If you use something like Sage, that's clearly part of the finance team, isn't it? There haven't been many tech solutions in businesses that have been so kind of far-reaching, that can have such a large impact on all areas of the business.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree with that. And I think I'll add to that, it's also about the business leaders understanding, the CRM or HubSpot or what it does, etc. There was a conversation recently with a client where there was a sort of light bulb moment as they understood if they could get the data that they're currently capturing in HubSpot into their ops team that use a different platform, suddenly that would release a huge amount of opportunity in the ops team around customer experience. But their ops leaders, their account leaders, didn't really understand, they didn't understand where that data was being captured. It's been captured for years, but has never been thought about in a more all-encompassing way, if you like, and that joined-up thinking was missing. But so I think a lot of it is about understanding that in terms of the software, the tech stack in the business.
Yeah, and I think that understanding is directly related to thinking about the customer, isn't it? Thinking about the business's customer. And again, to that point, the most successful businesses are those that focus on their customers. So I think if a business owner or leader starts with that in mind, then it becomes a bit easier to perhaps think about how to deploy, in this instance, HubSpot, but any solution really.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, more importantly, sort of leading on to the next area to kind of have a conversation about is the technical requirements, I guess, to deploy HubSpot effectively or connect HubSpot with other platforms. And for us, that's something we have lent into over the years quite hard, and we continue to grow that because, increasingly, I think in the modern world, there is no platform that's a one-stop shop for everything. HubSpot is quite broad now, as we've just talked about, but equally, people use Sage for finance or, SAP or Oracle or whatever it might be, depending what level they're at. That technical capability to understand how to connect things, I think is really important. That doesn't necessarily need to be in-house in terms of, on our side or the business side, but it's that understanding the art of the possible to be able to create and design these solutions that help the business grow. So what's your view on that?
Yeah, so I think that comes back to asking questions again, probably inside the business, even before they kind of get to have a conversation with you. The art of the possible is really important there because there's so much capability written into the opportunities to link HubSpot into other solutions, isn't there? But I'm not sure clients are aware of that. And I think that comes back to this challenge that HubSpot as a brand has in terms of communicating exactly what it is. Is it an add-on to other things or is it a standalone? Is it something that enhances other systems or is it something that improves your marketing? It's such a broad proposition that it has now. It's quite difficult for it to make sense to everybody all of the time. So I think business leaders probably need to first of all work out what their challenge is, encourage people to ask them the right questions, and then they'll be surprised by how many opportunities there are to improve what they're already doing through linking in a HubSpot solution.
Yeah. I think that's really helped by technology leaders now having a seat at the board table. I think if we go back 5-10 years, perhaps, technology was, it was the IT team, but now technology, CTO, CIO, however you frame that, they're part of they've got a chunk of the boardroom in their corner. So.
And for a while, I don't know if it's still as fashionable as it was, but for a while there was this role of customer experience officer, which I understand, but really it was kind of fudging the issue of where does the customer sit, because the customer should sit at board level with a conversation between the CMO and the CTO and the CFO and the CEO, because the customer is so integral to all this conversation. And I think if businesses started with how can we improve our relationship with the customer, then everything else kind of falls into place. And a lot of great businesses do that. The businesses that we individually like and admire and trust and trade with, they're the ones that do that. It's the ones that perhaps have systems where I had a situation the other day, and this was from a professional services business where I'd been invited to a seminar through an email, and I was looking forward to it, and it was in my diary for 3 weeks, and then the day before it got cancelled, and I had an email through from the person who'd set it up saying, really sorry, I've got to cancel, these are the reasons. And then 2 hours later, I had an invitation I had an email reminding me that the seminar was on tomorrow. So I had to ring them up again and say, sorry, I'm really confused. Is this on? Is this off? Or they went, oh no, that should have never gone out.
Yeah.
And that's because this automation had taken over rather than common sense, and that the reliance had been on the tech rather than on some common sense. So if they'd have thought about customer first and thought about the importance of their relationship with me, perhaps somebody would have, thought about how that.
Yeah, so that's a very nice segue into my next point, which is around, HubSpot launched the Content Hub, a few weeks ago. A lot of it AI driven, and obviously AI is the hot topic at the moment. And I have no doubt AI will change a significant amount of things. You're just talking about the human experience. You're talking about, the customer. AI obviously will play a part in enhancing the customer experience, but I think, that has to be done quite carefully. What are your thoughts on HubSpot's launch of Content Hub, which is AI powered, and I guess AI in general in the business, across businesses, all sectors?
So again, I suppose, having seen how the internet was adopted 30, 35 years ago into business, I've got the benefit of seeing how radical, new, transformative technologies affect business. And what I remember happening then, I think it's going to happen far quicker this time, is that there was a bit of a bandwagon and everybody jumped on it, but they weren't entirely sure why. And I suspect there'll be a period where everybody is using AI and it's not entirely sure, and they're not entirely sure to what end. And as a result, a lot of things are looking very similar. And a lot of content is very similar because they're not taking the time to base it on their customers. They're using the AI to do it. And we're already seeing that, aren't we, with how people are using ChatGPT. There is an awful lot of content that is very, very similar. I think what HubSpot's AI will, because it's going to be based around businesses or companies' data set and customer knowledge, it will improve that relevancy massively. And I can see how it will help speed up things. Not that it will necessarily replace the need for the reasoning behind doing it. I think that'll always be a human thing, but it will certainly speed up the opportunity to do things and allow for a lot more test and learn as well. So, businesses will be very able to, who's to say if a database has 1,000 contacts on it that you won't very soon be able to do 1,000 completely tailored individual emails on one campaign, whereas before you would have had to have done 2 or 3 because it was just too impossible to do the variety.
And that being automated, that being just happens. You don't. This isn't smart content. Yeah.
And that's the difference, isn't it? Is AI isn't just about producing content; it's about producing the mechanisms to deliver the content as well. And yeah, I don't know if you heard on the news this morning. There was an 18-month-old baby who just received some groundbreaking DNA therapy to restore her hearing, and it was absolutely an astonishing piece of science. And what it was saying was there's an opportunity to do some really interesting, as we all know, individually based medicines now. That's the future of medicine. It's probably the future of business as well, isn't it? The individuality and one-on-one communication is going to be the way forward, or one-on-one relationships with businesses, rather than just relying on this sort of historic demographic or psychographic segmentation. And that's another role, I think, for AIs to work that out. 20 years ago, the debate was around a single customer view. In a few years' time, it will be about a single customer engagement.
Yeah, I think it's exciting times, and it's moving really fast, isn't it? So the bit for me that I feel pretty comfortable with HubSpot's approach to this and their place in the whole AI ecosystem or opportunity is around, the fact that, it has open API. You can push and pull data pretty easily from the CRM, and therefore, and if you think about data being the fuel for AI, it just opens up the opportunity there, whether you're pushing to another platform or whether you're pulling it into HubSpot to do clever things with, it's all there. So, plenty of opportunity. We're going to see how that plays out for sure.
So with AI, it's an enormous subject, isn't it? But I think for businesses, they'd be well advised to start leaning into it and thinking about it on a strategic level, rather than just thinking, well, we've got these tools to use to get quick content out, and there's a bigger play there, and that will need, I think, external people coming in and helping them understand that as well, because it's not just as simple as, well, let's get the AI to do it. There's a bigger thing there, not least the ethical considerations.
Fascinating. Someone mentioned to me the other day, we were just talking about this, and the quote I heard was, in a very short space of time, we won't know what is AI and what isn't. And actually, when we get there, that's possibly a better place than where we are now, because then it means that we start questioning things differently in the right way, because there's this understanding of, AI being normal. I think it's a fascinating place we're going to get to.
Yeah, and it throws up a big topic that I'm really keen that, again, the businesses that I work with explore, and this idea of trust. And this is probably too big for this conversation, but does how you behave and what you communicate instill trust in you as a business? Because that's really, it's the most important kind of human commodity, but at the same time the most fragile. And businesses constantly have to be thinking about that. And AI could really damage trust, or it could enhance it.
Yeah, and actually that's a really good point. Sort of one, I guess, last area to cover and talk about, Nick, with you, because it's really interesting, is HubSpot's brand and how it contributes to its customer trust and satisfaction as it's grown. And every business that grows has growing pains. HubSpot, I think, have done incredibly well to deliver on their strategy to be the position they're in now, where they're knocking on the door of enterprise solutions and Salesforce and all the rest of it, which is pretty amazing, really. I remember when we first became a HubSpot partner, there's talk of drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't think anyone uses that phrase, or haven't used it in the context of HubSpot particularly recently, and that's possibly part of their own brand evolution of trying to move away from this idea of drinking the Kool-Aid. You're a brand person at heart. You run a brand agency. What do you think about HubSpot's brand identity contributing to trust and satisfaction? And what parts of that are really important for them to maintain, to have this long-term customer loyalty?
So I think the key one is being open and transparent about what they're doing. Because I think with any technology, irrespective of whether or what flavor it is, at the heart of it, you have to understand, why is that business in business, and what are they trying to achieve with it. So I think the values that sit behind the brand, as I said right at the beginning, the guy who started the brand is really kind of key to it as well. There's plenty of brands that are in the tech space that have been started by people who perhaps didn't have the intentions to improve things. They might have come to it with different intentions. That isn't the case with HubSpot. You can see that there is a real desire to improve the way that businesses interact with their customers through whatever tool. So I think at the heart of that business, there is something that is solid and can be trusted. However, as I said, it's the most fragile of human commodities, so it has to be constantly built on. I think they do some good work in helping their partners and the businesses that they're used in understand how to get the best out of them. I think they're very focused on training and engagement. But there's possibly a challenge that they're going to have as they do become bigger and omnipresent. Because that's when trust starts to wobble a little bit. That's when it gets genuinely quite tricky, because intentions are questioned. And we've seen that with all the large tech businesses over the years, haven't we? But I think they're in a good place. What I like, you've described it in terms of technology capability, in terms of APIs and being able to link into other systems and tech. And I think that's a huge strength of the platform, because that, again, demonstrates this openness and this desire to be part of improving customer relations, rather than, it's a closed off system and really difficult to connect to other things, which you used to see a lot of, didn't you, a few years ago. So I think that openness is probably the key to the brand.
Yeah, I get that. And I think that openness is interesting. You talk about openness in terms of the technology, but it is that openness around the brand, their community, for example. There is a huge HubSpot community of people helping each other, and I would argue that's not something Salesforce has, as arguably their main competitor now. And I think that's great. There's all sorts of forums out there of support for HubSpot, and HubSpot lean into that. They actually encourage it. They reward people who help each other. So yeah, I love that.
And it's not just an agency thing. When I've been inside of businesses that have been using HubSpot, and the marketing teams I've been working with have been using it on a daily basis, they've used those forums as well. So it's quite an holistic approach. It's really, and that's quite unusual. You don't usually see that in a lot of business to business technology tools. Sometimes they can be closed off to certain audiences because it's within their interest. But I think HubSpot do appreciate that it's within everybody's interest to understand it fully. And perhaps that's something you'll see as well, John. HubSpot, I'm seeing that certain sectors are becoming more and more interested in HubSpot as their solution than they were historically, principally actually latterly professional services. I'm seeing a lot more interest in it, whereas they wouldn't have historically understood the value of it. And I think that's because they can see that it's not about, improving retail sales or e-commerce sales. It's actually about improving customer relationship. And you can see how they are slowly engaging and educating themselves around the HubSpot ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great place to finish. And hopefully, just to add to that, the changes we've made in our business in terms of the vision and positioning around this consultancy work will help businesses do just that. I think that's going to be super important for us, just to ensure we add value into the customers we work with.
Yeah, and make sure we ask the right questions of our clients, and I think that's a kind of a good thing to be doing, irrespective of what field you're in, just asking the right questions.
Yeah. And actually, that's really interesting. In light of AI, it's, we talk about prompt engineering, and it's actually the questioning and the listening that are so important going forward. The knowledge is all there, but actually it's how you challenge, how you prompt, how you get under the skin of things. It's all that questioning that is so important. So yeah, great place to finish, Nick. Thanks ever so much for your time and for joining me today. Pleasure to have you on the show. Your wise counsel, Nick. So thank you for that, and generous in your time. So I'm sure listeners have gained valuable insights from where HubSpot is, where HubSpot's going, maybe a little bit selfishly about Karman and what we're trying to do here. But yeah, I think there's an interesting time ahead on the back of AI. HubSpot seems well placed around that. And let's just see where that takes us. So thanks for listening. That's all for today's episode of PodSpot. Join us next time as we delve into more topics surrounded by the HubSpot excellence and team that join us on these HubSpot calls, these PodSpot calls. Remember to subscribe for more episodes and leave us a review if you enjoyed today's discussion. Thanks very much.